The Great Awakening, Uncovering Truth, and Inspiring Rebellion. In the dusty archives of a forgotten library, an old man named Arthur shuffled through pages of yellowed newspaper clippings. His eyes, though clouded with age, gleamed with the sharpness of a hawk as they scanned headlines from more than 75 years ago. The room was silent, save for the occasional cough that echoed through the vast emptiness, a stark contrast to the sound of protests that once filled the streets. Arthur had devoted his life to piecing together the truth, hidden behind layers of government propaganda and lies. For decades, the ruling class had systematically poisoned the populace, tainting the very water that sustained life. But Arthur knew better. He had seen the documents, the memos that spoke of control, not care. The buildings outside the library had grown taller, the streets more crowded, but the truth remained buried, obscured by the gleaming facade of progress. The government's grip on power had only tightened, their tactics evolving with each generation. The poison was no longer just in the water, but in the air they breathed, the food they ate, and even the very fabric of their clothes. The people had grown complacent, too busy with their lives to question the hand that fed them. They had been lulled into a state of apathy, their spirits dulled by the very substances that were killing them. The once bustling cities were now mere shadows of their former selves. The buildings, once gleaming with promise, now stood as sentinels of despair. The parks that had been filled with the laughter of children had become desolate wastelands, the playgrounds rusted and overgrown. The air was thick with pollution, the sky a sickly grey. The government had painted a picture of utopia, but it was a canvas, stained with the tears of the oppressed. The rich had retreated to their ivory towers, watching the world crumble from afar, their wealth insulating them from the horrors they had wrought. But Arthur was not one to give up. His heart was fueled by a burning anger that had only grown with time. He knew the truth had to be told, that the people had to know what had been done to them. It was time to pass on his knowledge, to find those who would listen and fight back. He stepped into the crumbling streets, squinting against the harsh sun that pierced the smog. The air was a noxious cocktail of chemicals, making it difficult to breathe. He coughed, his lungs protesting the intrusion, but he pressed on. His destination was the heart of the city, where a ragtag group of rebels had taken root, their numbers growing each day. As he approached the makeshift headquarters, nestled in the hollowed-out remains of a once grand theater, he saw a young woman with fiery hair and eyes to match. She was speaking to a gathering crowd, her voice clear and strong. Arthur felt a surge of optimism, his heart swelling with pride. This was the spark that could ignite the flame of change. He approached her, and she turned, recognizing the gravity in his gait. "Evelyn," he rasped, "I have something you need to see." He handed her a small, leather-bound book filled with his meticulous notes and evidence. Her eyes scanned the pages, her expression turning from curiosity to horror to determination. "This," Arthur said, his voice barely above a whisper, "this is how we bring them down." The book contained the blueprints for the government's control system, the very formulas of the poisons they had fed to the people. Evelyn took a deep breath, her eyes never leaving the pages. "We will not let them win," she vowed, her voice echoing in the desolate space. "We will rise up, and we will show them the true cost of their greed." The crowd around her murmured in agreement, a rumble of defiance growing into a roar. Arthur felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He had done his part. The story of their enslavement and the tools for their liberation were now in the hands of those who would fight for it. The rebellion grew stronger each day, their numbers swelling with every new recruit. They worked tirelessly, spreading the word and sharing the purified water they had managed to produce in secret. But the people were no longer sheep. blindly following their shepherds to the slaughter. They had been awakened by the truth, and they were ready to fight. The day of the final uprising dawned, the air thick with tension. Arthur watched from the shadows as the water-bearers and their allies gathered in the city square, their faces a mix of fear and resolve. The first shots rang out, piercing the silence like a knife through the heart of the old world. The fight was on, and there was no turning back. The government's forces were vast, their power seemingly unshakable, but the people had a weapon more potent than any weapon of war: the truth. And so the battle raged. A clash of ideologies played out in the streets. The air was filled with the sound of breaking glass, the scent of burning rubber, and the acrid smell of tear gas. The water-bearers, armed with nothing but hope and the purified water they carried, faced down the oppressors. As the sun set, the square was a battleground. But the tide had turned. The government's forces began to retreat, their numbers dwindling as their grip on power slipped away. The ivory towers stood tall, but they trembled at the foot of the new world that was being built. And from the ashes of the old order, a new society began to rise, one where the currency was not gold or power, but clean water and goodwill. The trees grew tall once more, their leaves a vibrant green that had not been seen in generations. Evelyn, now a revered leader of the revolution, stood before the crowd, the leather-bound book of truth in her hand. She spoke of the journey they had taken, the sacrifices made, and the promise of a world where freedom was not just a word, but a way of life. Her words resonated through the square, filling the air with hope and determination. The people listened, their eyes shining with the light of a new dawn. The first weeks were fraught with challenges. Old habits died hard, and the temptation to return to the familiar comforts of the past was strong. But Arthur and Evelyn, along with their fellow rebels, worked tirelessly to educate and inspire. They showed the people how to farm, how to purify water without the need for government-controlled tablets, and how to live in harmony with the earth. Slowly but surely, the seeds of change took root. As the months turned to years, the dystopian landscape transformed. Gardens bloomed where once had stood concrete jungles, and the air grew cleaner with each passing day. The once bustling streets were now filled with the sounds of children playing and adults working together. But the journey was far from over. The scars of the old world lingered, and new conflicts arose as the people learned to govern themselves. Yet the spirit of the revolution remained, a beacon that guided them through the trials of rebuilding. Arthur watched from his small garden, a smile playing on his lips as he tended to his plants. The world was not perfect, but it was theirs. Over the next couple of years, the cities transformed into sprawling oases of green, with buildings intertwined with vines and trees that provided shade from the now gentle sun. The streets were no longer concrete rivers, but walkways of packed earth, allowing nature to breathe and flourish. The people had come to understand that true wealth was in the soil beneath their feet and the water that nourished all life. The air was no longer thick with pollution, but sang with the melodies of birds that had returned in flocks, painting the once grey skies with a kaleidoscope of colour. The rivers that had been choked with waste now teemed with fish that leaped in joyous arcs, their scales shimmering in the light. The world had become a symphony of life, and every creature played their part in the grand orchestra of existence. Conflicts arose, as they often do, but the people had learned from their past. They faced them with the same unity and resolve that had brought down their oppressors. Through dialogue and compromise, they found solutions that did not require the suffering of others, and so the world continued to thrive, a living testament to the power of truth and the indomitable spirit of humanity. Meditation had become a daily ritual for many, a time to connect with themselves and the earth. The vibrations of peace and love resonated across continents, creating a harmonic frequency that soothed the very soul of the planet. The cacophony of anger and despair that had once dominated the airwaves was replaced by the gentle hum of collective consciousness, a vibration so high it seemed to touch the heavens themselves. In the heart of this newfound unity, a global network of sanctuaries was established. These spaces, sacred to all, served as centers for healing, learning, and growth. Here, the people gathered to share knowledge, to seek solace, and to find strength in the company of others. And Arthur, now a revered elder, would often visit these sanctuaries, sharing his story with those who would listen. His eyes, though clouded with the years, held a spark of wisdom that had not dimmed. He would sit beneath ancient trees, their branches whispering the secrets of time, and speak of the lessons learned from the dark days. The story of the Great Awakening became a sacred text, read and recited in the quiet moments of reflection. It served as a stark reminder of the price of freedom and the importance of vigilance in the face of tyranny. Yet it was also a story of hope, of the resilience of the human spirit, and the boundless potential of a people united. As the sun set on this new world, the vibrations remained high, a gentle reminder that the battle was won, but the war was never ending. For in every heart, there was a choice to be made each day, to hold on to anger or to embrace compassion, to hoard power or to share it freely. And it was in these moments of silent reflection that the people found the grace to continue their march towards a brighter future, hand in hand, their hearts beating in unison with the rhythm of the earth.